Hey, folks, today we're going to talk about cops and social workers and what is the center left position when it comes to cops and social workers. We know the far left socialist view to fund the police and replace police with social workers and community social workers. But that is not the center left position. Our position is good policing, better policing. What is policing going to look like going into the future? Because it's changing rapidly. And let's have a discussion about it. This is Between the Left and a Hard Place. We're a center left podcast. My name's Dean Charles, and let's go. Hey, folks. So today's discussion is going to be about social workers and cops. This is purely unscientific. It's not scientific at all. All I did was call a lot of social workers and a lot of cops and had a discussion with them about it. And now I'm going to have a discussion with you. I think it's center left Democrats, moderate Democrats, independents, and even Republicans should want to have the discussion of what does policing in the future look like? What should it look like going forward into the future? Times are changing, baby. They change rapidly, and police are going to have to change with the times. But how do we do that? What's the most effective way? How do we do it so people feel safe? It's paramount for people to feel safe. We have to feel safe. And when I talk to cops and social workers, one of the things that's really important to both, especially cops, is trust. Cops feel that the public has lost faith in the cops. Maybe not all faith, but has lost enough where they can feel it, and it makes a difference in how to effectively police and help people feel safe and eliminate crime. So this is for discussion purposes only. Let's start with the cops, because when I talk to cops, every single cop, and I talk to about at least 20, right, cops from around the country, various police departments, they all kind of say the same thing, especially if they're a beat cop. And every cop, I guess, has been a beat cop at one time or another when they first started out. They say the same thing. You know, they spend a lot of time with homelessness, addiction, and mental illness. And a lot of times, sometimes their whole shift can be spent on that. And they do feel like a lot of the time, their efforts could be spent way better with other things besides those three things, besides dealing with the mentally ill and the drug addicted or any addiction and homelessness. And so there is room for some type of community help, whether it's social workers or not, but most likely social workers, to aid and give police other things to work on. But where does that line drawn? And that's a tough thing for all of them, every single person I talk to distinguish, because the one thing they all worry about, and this is both cops and social workers, is when those situations can turn violent, because those situations can turn violent. They're not necessarily criminals, but they can become violent, right? So that's the problem, is when you're dealing with that population, that segment of the population in any town across America. It doesn't mean whether it's in the big cities or smaller suburbs or small cities around the country. The cops have to deal with those situations, and they feel that people could be better served if the cops were dealing with different situations. They all feel that way, but those situations turning violent is the problem, right? That's when everyone identifies, both the cops and the social workers. So they know they have to deal with it. The cops know that they're in charge of those situations because of that factor, because safety is paramount for everyone. One of the things, interestingly, that cops and social workers sort of agreed on is that there is a possibility maybe of social workers going to college to become a social worker, passing all the state exams and whatever you have to do to please the state in order to become a certified social worker, and then going to the academy, going to the local police academy and becoming a cop also. And maybe people plan that from college, becoming a social worker. Maybe there's something we can institute where people want to go into social working, but they also wind up going to the police academy and get trained so that when they get called out to a situation, they're trained in those situations where a situation can turn violent. That is a possible situation. But I think these are solutions that, as pragmatic, center left, independent, moderate, and maybe even Republicans think about, what are the pragmatic solutions for policing going forward? And that's one that the social workers and the police agreed on. So obviously not all social workers are cut out to be cops. I think everybody could agree on that, right? So if you're a social worker, you don't necessarily want to be a cop, and you don't want to be put in those situations. There's a lot of other areas where social workers are needed. We all know them. They're in all kinds of situations with children and hospitals and you know custody battles, and the list goes on and on. Everybody knows there's social workers, all kinds of facets in our communities. So not all of them are cut out to be cops, but for the ones that do want to be cops, this is what we'll do. When it comes to the socialists and the Mondami crew, they just want to strictly defund the police and replace it with social workers. And to me, my opinion, and this is my opinion only, is that would be catastrophic. It would create anarchy. It would create a situation where people didn't feel safe. And safety is paramount. Safety is one of the things that we rely on in the United States. Anywhere you are, people want to feel safe. It doesn't matter where you are. Safety is something we all want to feel in our lives. And how do we get there? How do we move into the future and help people feel safe and feel like that the cops have their backs, no matter if it's cops and social workers or just cops, and probably not just social workers. I don't think anybody agrees with that except for the socialists. So we have to get out of that mentality and think about what moves us into the future. How do we feel safe? And I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say, what people have to say. So please comment below and let's have this discussion. We can have an ongoing discussion about what the center left position would be on this and is it the right decision. Social workers are also fearful of situations. They get scared too. They do not want that situation to turn violent. So if they get called in, they do not want it to turn violent. Now, listen, I was talking to a cop in LAPD that's actually pretty high up. They've experimented with social workers. I was surprised at how many police departments have experimented with it. He used the phrase triage the 911 calls. And, can you triage the 911 calls? I guess who's going to triage them? It's something that I've been trying to think of. But if you have trained people that answer the 911 calls and they're able to distinguish what might be okay for a social worker to complete or to go out on the field, it's possible that that's a solution. There are calls, I'll give you an example. Say a family has either a mentally ill or addicted relative in the house, whether it's a child, a parent, whatever the situation might be, a brother, a sister, a cousin, but somebody that is in a safe environment. They're not violent. There's no guns. They're not threatening. They just have a situation that maybe a social worker could handle in a controlled environment like that. That's a situation a social worker could definitely handle. And if triage, possibly when the 911 call comes in, they could send out a social worker. And social workers seem to be okay with situations like that. They seem like maybe that's okay, but they're still a little fearful of any situation turning violent. That's why right now the best solution seems to be having social workers go to the police academy and becoming cops as well, and having a program, a social worker to cop program. And obviously there's money involved. Maybe there could be grants, loans, financial aid, some kind of system in place in the future that could be developed so that you go to college to become a social worker and leads right into the police academy. It'll be cost effective so people will come out in tremendous amount of debt, because all this takes money in the budgets and people have to take that into consideration. This is just totally up for discussion. I'd like to hear more so we can discuss more about this. I want to see how people feel. Am I the only one that feels this way? Is this the proper center left position? Because if it is, I think it's a good way to go. We have to be thinking about policing in the future. There is a problem with, obviously, we still have problems all around the country with what I said, homelessness, mental health, addiction. These are problems that need to be solved and we need to put more money into. And people do need to feel safe. And that's an important part of society. And that's an important part of the United States and our culture. And we need that moving forward. And we need to think about it. Hope you appreciated this discussion. I hope that you can write in the comments and tell me what you think, because I'd like to know. And thank you for listening.